Welcome to In the Now with Jim Swilley. We're so glad to have you with us here on the beautiful YouTube channel. And once again, we are very blessed that the planets lined up and Zach Keogh was able to be back with us again, or Keogh Zach, as he is online. So would you please welcome once again, Metron, our friend and brother Zach. Glad that you're here. Now, last week, let me show you the title that we did last week, and I think it was such a successful flow, we're going to build on it. The title is Energy Coherence, Perceiving the Interconnection of the Physical and the Metaphysical. So we did 1, 2, 3, and 4. I've never done a fourth one, but we were just cooking with gas last week, and I thought, let's keep going. So I was really glad that we were able to have that. So it worked out that Zach was able to be with us even again today, and as I mentioned earlier, he's about to be deployed. He'll be gone for a year, so you won't see him for a while. So it makes it even more special and appropriate that he's here today. If you're just now tuning into this program, please go back and watch the first 4 episodes so that I don't have to repeat a lot of things, so you'll get caught up to where we are. And I'm just going to speak into existence that we pick up right where we were last week. We tap into that energy and we take it to the next level. I know you're in agreement with that. And so do you want to say anything, or do you want to go ahead and put up the first slide and we'll just start talking about it?
So I'll go ahead and kind of preface this with a bit of a feedback of what we did cover, assuming that most of you, probably not all of you, got to see what we did talk about, the grounds that we covered last week. So it was based on the premise of the scripture that John wrote while he was on the island of Patmos in Revelations 10. I think the scriptures were 8 through 10. And essentially what that was him seeing a vision of an angel providing him or offering him a scroll to consume, and which John did. He conceded to the angel's wishes. He ate the scroll, and it appeased to his taste, but upon internalizing that information, because that's what the scroll was, it was old information, or the codex, or we could say maybe even the law. Upon internalizing that, once it hit his stomach, he didn't feel so well. It upset his stomach. And so the importance of that scripture is twofold, really. Number one, because even though it was expressed in an allegorical sense, the physical aspect of it is sometimes that we'll eat some things that are very familiar to us because we've eaten it most, if not all, of our lives. But yet when we are presented with new information, maybe it just doesn't taste so well, or maybe because it's just done so much damage to our internal organs over so much period of time that it begins to wreak even more havoc. The other part of that is, of course, when we receive new information, we have a tendency to look at the old information as something that is just really, really kind of disgusting. Like, how could I have subjected myself to that over such a long period of time, not with this new lens of seeing things from a different perspective? And that's because of the new information that we receive. So that was the premise of last week, and of course we went in depth to talk about the metaphysical, how it affects the physical. And this week I'm going to do pretty much a lot of the same thing, but with new information. And I think that's pretty much it.
I love that verse of Scripture, and I really had never looked at it that way. It resonated with me on several levels. And for me personally, it was a kingdom key. It was like I knew exactly what I believe John was saying there. That there's some things that you're glad that they were in your life, but they don't nourish you anymore. And you're not being mean about it. It's just like I don't eat that anymore. I don't think that way anymore. I'll notice even in my Facebook memory something will come up that I wrote a couple of years ago, and I think I don't even think like that now. Like, that's not. I've changed that much in 2 years this isn't even. There's no point in even posting this again, because unless I was just being ironic to show how much I've changed. So it's good stuff, and it's Proverbs talks about a word in season, and I felt like that was a word in season. So, and we're going to continue with that today. So let's go ahead and put up whatever. We're back in.
Yes. So
where are we?
Yep.
We're in 1 John chapter 2
yeah,
if you're
so
listening to the podcast.
same guy, just a different time in which he is writing this letter here.
Yeah, John wrote, most of the people think he wrote the Gospel of John, the three epistles, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and Revelation. Go ahead.
Sure. So this is, last week, Bishop tried to press me for some excerpts from my book, and I said, no, this is straight from the NIV. So this week I've taken a couple of excerpts from my book,
Excellent.
my translation, and I'm going to share that with you. This is the first of two that I'll share with you here. I'm going to stand up and read.
Yeah.
So it starts as following. Again, this is 1 John out of chapter 2, verses 7 through 8. And again, the working title for this is John, Relativity Speaking.
I like it.
So it says, friends, this phenomenon is nothing new. In fact, even the ancients discovered the solution of synergy between mind and matter, how the mind materializes matter. This eternal wisdom, which predates time. That is why it resonates with our eternal being, and we perceive it as new information. Upon receiving this information, you sense immediately an internal seismic shift of epic proportions as a result of enlightenment and exposure to things you were once ignorant and oblivious.
Yeah, I love it.
So that pretty much, that in itself attests to what we were talking about, what I just explained in microcosm from last week's lesson, if you will. Is basically getting that new information, internalizing it, and then really just kind of disposing of that old information, because that old information has served its purpose. It's time for it to move on, right? And in comes the new. And our bodies, whether or not we realize it, operate in the same capacity. There's been information that our body has received by way of consuming certain foods, and it no longer serves its purpose. And maybe even to the extent that it's probably done more damage than good, because we've consumed it way beyond the point that we should have. And because we have been negligent in taking care of our bodies by feeding it the right foods, we're still feeding off that old information. And really it's based on a lot of assumptions, right? So this food, it doesn't hurt me, so, what doesn't kill me, I guess makes me stronger. I don't know. So we'll cover that in just a little bit.
And so much preaching that goes on in Christian churches, empty calories. Do you know what I mean? It's like it fills people up, but it doesn't feed them. I remember, this. I love when you just get this little piece of information. But I remember one time when I was first starting to really watch what I eat, I was sitting next door in the restaurant, and I for some reason I overheard the people at the table next to me talking, and one of them said, well, it's important to feed your body, not feed your stomach. And that seems like a simple thing, but it's like I really got that. I thought, that's right. And it's easy to, if you're hungry or if you're emotionally not where you need to be, it's easy just to pop something in your mouth that you think's going to make you feel better. And it might take away the hunger pangs, but it's not nutritional. It doesn't feed you in the long run. And it's a paradigm shift in the spiritual and the physical to say, I need to feed myself food that's going to help me in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. Your body longs for nutrients that it needs to operate in an optimal capacity, if not just to continue its self-healing process. And the foods that we feed our body don't permit our body to do that. In fact, it's doing just the opposite. It's doing more destruction than it is allowing or enabling our body to heal itself.
That's why sometimes you can stand at the refrigerator and just graze, and you eat something and you think, nah, that wasn't it. Like you keep thinking, am I hungry? No, I'm not hungry in that sense. My body needs something that I need to give it.
Can we go on to the next slide, please? So this is another excerpt, 2 of 2, that I'll share with you all from my book. This is from the 4th chapter of 1 John, and this is verse 8, and it reads as follows. For generations we lived under the guise of a doctrine that instructed its constituents to fear the God of our ancestors, as if to anticipate reprisal for not adhering to the codex developed from the annals of our ancestral history. But this fear produces a constant stress in our minds, a negative emotional contagion resulting in maladies in our bodies. Perceiving the universe in the light of love removes the lens of fear. Anyone that continues to live in fear of reprisal from the God of our ancestors has yet to tap into this source of eternal love.
I love it. That's good stuff. Yeah, Zach, you got a gift for interpretation. That's awesome.
Thank you. So I don't know if this needs much explanation, but it kind of ties in with what we were just saying, is that there is primarily, the key takeaway for this, for all intents and purposes this morning, is so that you understand there is a connection between the mind and the body. And when we're really referring to the body, I'm going to focus more on our intestinal tract and how that affects how we think, how we feel, and how receptive we are to the universe. Can we go?
That's awesome.
Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is another comment. Last week I introduced a comment from a gentleman known as Dr. Alberto Villoldo. So a book that he published, it was published earlier this year, is called Grow a New Body. It was published in January or February of this year. He says, you need abundant serotonin to meditate, to make love, and to forgive yourself and others. Attending to the health of your gut brain, where your serotonin is manufactured, will help you attain this. And he says, later on, he says, you need serotonin to stay in love. So serotonin is that feel-good hormone. It's also a neurotransmitter, right? It's that neurotransmitter that helps the stomach talk to the brain by way of what we referred to, we covered it last week, the vagus nerve, that nerve that covers the brain, the stomach, and it goes all the way down to the rectal area. And that is that information highway in which information is communicated. So a lot of the information that's ingested and eventually digested into the stomach signals up to the brain, and it begins to talk. And that's why when you just mentioned, when the stomach says, hey, I'm hungry, it sends that signal to the brain. The first thing, because we're operating under, most of the time, a subconscious reality, right? We don't think about it much, right? We're not in that state of awareness or consciousness. So the subconscious is really in automatic mode, more or less, right? So that's why the first things that come to mind are things of convenience, right? Well, there's a McDonald's, or there's a this, or there's a that. And if you like McDonald's, by all means, continue on with it. I'm not here to tell you that you can't or whatever. All I'm saying is that those foods are very highly processed, and they have an impact, a pervasive effect on our bodies.
And sometimes you just have to. It's just a matter of convenience. You're somewhere and you think there's no other alternative. You're just going to have to do it and not condemn yourself over it. But it's the lifestyle part of it that becomes really life-threatening.
So, but the connection that I wanted to make is it's not just a matter of just staying healthy for the sake of staying healthy, but so that we can, and again, to his comment, so that we're highly receptive to the energetic fields, right, the universe, so that we can attain a state of oneness, right, so we can retain ourselves in a state of love and everything that love stands for. That really is the ultimate goal in all of this, but we cannot do that if we don't take care of our bodies. We have to take care of our bodies. So meditation is great, and I'm a huge advocate for meditation. I think it's great, but it's not the panacea. In fact, according to Dr. Villoldo, if I can meditate all I want to, but if I'm feeding my body junk, I'm not going to be highly receptive. Why? Because a lot of these toxins or free radicals that permeate into our bloodstream ignites our body to go into some kind of autoimmune process, which is not good. So we feel bloated, or we feel foggy, or we feel whatever, and some of these have even long-term issues, right? So we're talking Alzheimer's, dementia, that kind of stuff. Now scientists are beginning to realize the stomach has more involvement in those things, or potentially has more involvement in those things than we've given it credit for in times past. So a lot of this research has taken place within the last 20 or 30 years. So why isn't it breaking news? Well, first of all, because there is a lot of information that still needs to be obtained, right? So they have to do studies, and studies take time. But I can assure you this, for doctors to go out and say, hey, we were all wrong about this, it wasn't the drugs weren't the quick fix, it was basically your diet. Listen, there's a lot of money in big pharma. Right. So imagine what that does to the pharma industry and our economy, right? I mean, you think it's a big issue to say, well, I don't understand why major auto manufacturers just don't make all electric vehicles. Right. It's because that has it has a huge effect if we decide, hey, today we're going to stop making combustion engine vehicles and start producing electric vehicles. That has an effect on our economy.
Money answereth all things.
Absolutely. So, I think that Yeah, so serotonin, and again, I won't cover this in depth because you'll just have to catch it last week if you didn't. Serotonin is that hormone and also a neurotransmitter that enables us to feel good about ourselves and also just feel good internally and physically, right? And then, of course, making sure that we're in a state of, or helps us, enables us to maintain a state of awareness, right?
Beautiful. Uh, okay. All right. We're going to put a comma right there. This is some good stuff. Thank you for being with us today on In the Now with Jim Swilley. We'll see you next time. Peace. Good. All right.